This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 339, the Friday, May 25th, 2018. Make that the Memorial Day weekend edition of the podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, a long way from the Brooklyn bunker. I am down here in Florida. I decided to channel my inner Super Bowl winning quarterback. The event last weekend, World Horse Players Tour Santa Anita Preakness Challenge, it was such a win that I literally decided to go to Disney World. And that is where I am. The family is already over there at the park, digging on the Magic Kingdom and all that stuff. I'm back here at the hotel because didn't want to leave everybody in the lurch today. We owe you a podcast. We're going to give you a podcast. Also, in an unusual locale, after getting shut down in his attempt to do the show from a fancy Motel 6 somewhere in the middle of Planet Texas. He's the people's champion. He's the Baron of Breakage. He's Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
Well, first of all, it's a Studio 6 extended stay Motel 6 version. It's like their upper class version of the Motel 6. And it's in Buda, Texas, B-U-D-A. I was driving in between young Kinchin. Austin Kinchin graduated from kindergarten today. I was trying to make it back to the Texas bunker. I couldn't make it back, so I had to pull over and I'm going to do the show from the car. I got the AC on. If it's bothering you, too bad. It's already 84 degrees in the great state of Texas.
I think I might have you beat here in Orlando, JK. I wasn't really quite prepared for these swamp-like conditions. It felt to my wimpy self like it was still 90 degrees at 8 o'clock last night when we were rolling here. But the thing I'll give you the most about Orlando, I'll tell you just a little bit about my morning before we dive into the show proper. Have you seen the film Zootopia?
I have. That's a good one. With the sloth. What does he call him? He calls him
Flash 100-yard dash.
Flash, yeah, there it is. Yeah, 100-yard dash.
That was the scene I was going to reference in. This is what happens when you get two people with small children with a show. Though the movie is great and worth watching at any age. But the scene in the DMV with the sloth who punches one key at a time. I've met the human equivalent of the sloth like 4 times since I got off the plane here in Orlando. The rental car, I'm not joking. I think it took about 90 minutes. I went to get a cup of coffee before the show here this morning. Not joking. Iced coffee, no line. This is a 30-second exchange elsewhere in the United States. Took at least 5 minutes. I don't know what's going on, JK, but there's the pace of life just a little bit different down here in Orlando, Florida. But I'm kidding around. I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to get over there this afternoon and see all the fun Disney stuff and getting to see it through that 5-year-old's eyes.
If you have the opportunity, I've done this as of late. I did a amusement park, Universal Studios, with like the fast pass where you like pay the extra $100 or whatever it is to be able to like take the short lines. It's like, as a person who I've seen bet $100 on a horse before, let's go ahead and put the $100 extra on that fast pass because it's more than worth it.
Yeah, I'm fast passed up. I had to miss one thing this morning, but we've got 2 or 3 of those a day and looking to get rocking and rolling. It is funny. I did text my friend Sean Clancy about this weekend because this used to be this weekend my biggest handle of the year. Back in the days when Sean and I would plan a full-scale assault on the Fair Hill races. Do you know about the Fair Hill races?
I do not. A
little bit of a mute issue there. I think that's on the base.
It's my fault.
Just trying to give out squares. That's all. I'm not trying to make fun of you too much. But anyway, Fair Hill races, the one day of the year at Fair Hill, they have the old DuPont property, I think it is, where there's still a race course, parimutuel betting, mixed meat, flat and jump. And it is just an unbelievable day out. If you are anywhere in the area where you can go to this tomorrow, go. It's an experience unlike any other. No simulcasting money. And we would go, and it was the one we always used to joke, the one day of the year that we are the smart money, and would go and be able to just have a better sense and do well and sweep the occasional pool and do all these good things. And we would schedule, parties around it and have friends come in from all up and down the Northeast corridor and congregate at Sean's place in, I can't remember the name of the place in Pennsylvania where he was. He'll be embarrassed for me that I can't remember because we spent so many years there. But anyway, so I just joked to him, instead of, betting on horses and having it be one of my 5 biggest gambling days of the year, I'm just going to be sweating and standing in line this weekend. Where did my life go wrong?
I'm a little concerned about that event. I think I've seen pictures of it, and I feel like it'd be real problematic for me in my shoes. Well, they'd get really dirty there, wouldn't they? I'm not really sure about that.
It's weather related for sure. But if it turns up muddy, I would leave your bucket feet or whatever they are in the car and go for some put on a good pair of Timberlands. It might not be a bad idea. But I think you might be thinking of Far Hills is the one that's like always muddy. That's the New Jersey Hunt Meet in the fall. Bear Hill races is not to be confused with that. That's this thing. It's always Memorial Day weekend. And, you get some training races, some jumps. But the opportunity to bet on those races when you follow that circuit, as Sean does closely and as I used to much more closely, absolute blast. Just another fun Maryland racing thing. Speaking of fun Maryland racing, we're now almost a week out from this year's running of the Preakness. As we get farther away, JK, just curious if you've had any further thoughts on the race.
No, I saw the big horse was galloping today, and from all accounts seems to be doing just fine. Obviously, there's a long way to go until the second Saturday in June, but no, I didn't really take much away from it. I think I guess mentally, and maybe even in a conversation I had with someone who doesn't follow as much as us and our listeners, but just kind of comparing Justify to American Pharoah and comparing the race that they had and the Preakness. And I think the biggest thing that I took away from what Justify did was that although American Pharoah might have technically gone a little bit faster from a pace figure standpoint and as well as just raw time, he was doing it comfortable on his own, while Justify was doing it looking into the eyes of the champion 2-year-old and the runner-up in the Kentucky Derby. So I think that those are all important things to take into consideration moving forward.
I hear you, but the more I think about it, I set up the two competing narratives last weekend, the one leaning towards the clock, the one leaning towards, how he was doing it and whatever. And the more I look at the race just in terms of the data, in terms of how fast he went early, how fast he went late, I think it's very clear that American Pharoah's Preakness was a step up from his Derby and that Justify's was a step down. And as such, even though I think he's going to go into the race as the most likely winner, I'm committing to opposing him parimutually. That will not mean that I'm upset to see him win. I think it'd be a great story. I could see a couple of saver combinations with him on top. But even with this breaking news, have you heard the breaking news this morning? I wish we had a sounder for breaking news on the pod.
I heard the breaking news yesterday. Is that the same breaking news we're talking about today?
Yeah, no, we'll get to yesterday's breaking news, which apparently wasn't actual news, was at least semi-fake news. We'll get to that in a second. But I'm referring to the fact that Audible will not be competing in this year's Belmont Stakes. Your thoughts, JK?
I thought you were going that direction. I did see on Twitter in between the K's and the L's during graduation, I looked down after Austin's name and noticed that Vino Rosso and which other one? The other Todd worked today, but Audible did not. I'm going blank on the other. Noble Indy.
They just announced that Audible pointed to more of a summer campaign. Yesterday's news, we're going to talk about this. We're not in the business of talking about news that isn't news, but when it's reported in ESPN and the New York Times and you're a listener to our podcast, I think you deserve to hear our thoughts on it. There was a report going around yesterday, since denied by our friends at WinStar, that the Stallion rights for Justify had been sold to Coolmore. The figure cited was $60 million. some places made it sound like it was 60 all in. Other places made it sound like it was 60 plus incentives. But whatever. Elliot Walden has come out and said no deal has been finalized. Now, that wording's interesting because while it means that we shouldn't be analyzing a deal that doesn't exist in too much detail, I might have expected a different response to the effect of, we ain't selling Justified. And that was not the quote. The quote was, no deal has been finalized. So just on this very show, the last time we were here, JK, you were projecting into the future and walking into the amazing stud barn at WinStar at some point in the future and seeing the big red horse with the white face. It does sound like selling him, selling his stallion rights is an option, may have even already happened, and it's just not ready to be public yet. And it makes me go way back. Now, you're not a baseball guy, and this one might sail over your head, JK, but you certainly will know the player in question. And, I wish I knew what year it was. I think maybe 1918, when a team called the Red Sox sold a certain portly pitcher with a lot of power at the plate to their arch rival, the Yankees. You know what I'm talking about here?
Is this the great Bambino?
The Bambino, Babe Ruth. It almost brought that to the idea of WinStar selling Justified to Coolmore, brought Babe Ruth to my mind. Okay, I'm not going to lie. Hope I'm not offending anybody by throwing that comparison out there. But it just seemed odd to me. Now, it hasn't happened yet, so we don't need to go too far into the weeds. But I was just curious to what was your reaction to that rumor, and do you have any predictions or explanations?
I thought it was a little shocking, is whichever tense we're using. It's shocking. But here's the thing: is where I think that where the narrative can be spun, where it makes sense to me, is that WinStar is a breeding operation, but they're also a very heavy racing operation as well. I mean, they have a lot of race horses, and so. And obviously their goal is to build stallions, so that's a little bit confusing to me when you could potentially have a Triple Crown winner that's well-bred and all those good things. But I also understand why Coolmore would spend as much as they would, is because of the success they've had with Scat Daddy. To have an opportunity to get the best Scat Daddy possible. And correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Rob Dove, top 10 pro punter in the UK, could help more with this one, but are most of the good Scat Daddies that Coolmore has had, they're like Galileo mares, right?
That's a good question. I mean, the ones who've had success over there, I mean, they've got to be, right? So
I assume that like there's some more value there for them because they have all of those Galileo mares. If the Scat Daddy Galileo mare cross is like some powerful cross that they love, then it makes a little bit of sense for them to spend that extra bit. But it is a little bit confusing why WinStar would want to get rid of a stallion like that.
I think you're right about it making perfect sense for Coolmore, for sure. And also with, Mendelssohn in tow, that would give them two chances at a replacement for this irreplaceable stallion Scat Daddy. So the idea of trying to double your chances of that, I get it from their point of view. I just wonder if it doesn't have to do with the partnership, perhaps. That's a tricky thing about having partners, right? They are a stud operation, but maybe, and I'm just talking out of school here, and I don't know the truth of it, but maybe it's hard to properly compensate the partners when you have a potential massive cash offer, and maybe it's just a compromise that has to be made. I don't know. We'll learn much more about this. Any final thoughts on it before we move on?
Yeah, no, I don't know the details. And this is just honestly like a gut feeling, like an impression I've gotten. I've always gotten the impression that in those WinStar China Horse Club deals, I've gotten the impression that like one side is more concerned with the racing and the other side is more concerned with the stallion operation. So I don't know where that lies on like the level of how that kind of all levels out. But that could have something to do with it. I find it to be very curious.
And just to clarify, when I talked about the kickers before, and this could potentially appeal to the side that was more interested in the racing operations, when you make the deal, then you get more money for certain things, a bonus of X if the Triple Crown is won, X plus Y for every future grade 1 the horse wins. There's ways of doing it that can, sort of ramp up the value that's coming back. It's not like you don't necessarily have to have a deal like this where somebody's doesn't mean they're not necessarily high on racing a horse. It could just be another way of leveraging the value. Anyway, we'll know a lot more when real news happens. At this point, it's just all speculation. But like I said, it's been all over the mainstream media. So I felt like we'd be doing a disservice to our listeners not to at least give a little bit of a reaction to it. It's going to be an interesting race. I misspoke about something last week that I wanted to clarify. I'll put the coin in the mistake jar. When I was talking about the prices for what Justify was to win the Triple Crown, the prices I was citing, I think that really short Triple Crown price was from Vegas, not from the books in the UK and Ireland. The books in the UK and Ireland haven't really moved Justify's number. He was always like 11 to 10-ish to win the Belmont. Interesting to see in Vegas now that number also kind of similar. So market vibes, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, you'd still expect these prices to shorten up if Justify had super impressed in the Preakness. But on the other hand, so in a way, the market feels like he's a little cold with the books. But even though he's cold with the books, I still think he's twice the price that he's going to be in a couple of Saturdays. So I don't know. I mean, my gut is if you like him, if you want to bet him, that finding a way to do so fixed odds now would be the move. But I personally I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it 11 to 10 even. I think I'm just going to follow along. What's your gut on that price?
I know you got plenty of time to talk about this, but isn't this going to be the first time he gets to go 47 to the half, 47-4? Like, isn't this probably the first time that's going to happen?
Yeah. Well, he went pretty slow. Didn't he go slow in one of the first two races? But I mean, this will be, in theory, he's going to have a great setup, right? Because I don't know who's going to run on the lead with him anyway. We'll know more when they draw, obviously. It almost doesn't matter to me, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think this. I don't know. I've always felt like this big, high cruising speed, talented situation is like those are the horses that win at a mile and a half. I mean, those just the ones that just are forward and they just kind of lope along, while the other ones are tired trying to make runs passing him. I don't know. We'll see. We got plenty of time. Obviously, we got to see how he comes out of the race. But I agree with your point. If you're going to take 1 to 2 or 2 to 5 next Saturday, go ahead and grab the 11 to 10 now. Yeah, you got a couple of weeks of walking on eggshells to make sure that the horse gets into the gate. But there's probably an opportunity to kind of middle it a little bit. Take the 11 to 10 and then play the other couple of horses that you like at 7 or 8 to 1. There's probably an opportunity to make money with having 3 horses covered.
Not a bad idea. The other narrative being advanced, I heard Jimmy Barnes, assistant trainer, great horseman, talking about this, is that he truly seems to believe that the horse will move up on a dry track. If you believe and you have the opportunity to bet now, you'd have to think the audible declaration is a sign that justifies going to be making the race, certainly, which would be the only danger of taking that price now. What it means for his chances, I don't really know.
I saw someone on Twitter say something that was kind of interesting, and I mean, look, you can speculate, but that's why we love this sport. It's a puzzle in our brain, so it's fun. But the idea that if Audible runs, it makes him feel more confident about Justify because they know that he can't beat him. If he doesn't run, they're a little bit concerned, and they don't want to take the chance of him beating him. I know that's like it's like following the jocks, like Mike Smith was there, and now he's here, and now he's there, and now they're there type of deal. But I do think they're probably. I mean, it's not crazy. It makes a little bit of sense.
It does. It does make sense. We talked about it with Quip and the Preakness. The idea was that they know that there's no way this horse is going to beat the Star. If the Star fires, he's only there as a backup plan in case the Star doesn't fire. I get the idea that there's a suggestion that they think Justify can win, but maybe could back up enough to run second to Audible, who in a certain universe you might feel would improve again with the 5 weeks. I get the idea that it's not the super confident move, but I'll also tell you what, if there was something, not to delve too much into like conspiracy theory here, but when you're talking about taking bets 2 weeks ahead of time, this is the kind of thing you have to think about. If for some reason there was something off with Justify and he wasn't going to run, I'll have another style, the Audible wouldn't be declared from the race. So to me, it says he's good to go. He's good to go in the race, but maybe as that tweeter, and I wish we could remember who it was because I read it too and thought it was super clever and the person deserves props, but which we can't give them right now. Maybe we'll find it later and do so via Twitter. But the idea that it doesn't speak the greatest, it speaks like some confidence, speaks confidence he's going to go and show up, not confidence he's necessarily going to move forward. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Any other thoughts about the Preakness? I want to get to some listener questions here, JK, if you're feeling square.
Let's roll.
I like it. We got a lifestyle question. We always love that. We always love the lifestyle stuff on the show. Belmont coming up. We had a listener, Jennifer, making the trip from Arizona to New York for the Belmont. No idea what she's doing. She wanted to know about public transit options. Those are easy. There's a Long Island Railroad. There should be trains all day, all night. It can be a bit of a show. You might want to try to go out early. You might want to make plans to stay a little late. Those trains can get a little crazy. But if you're staying in Manhattan, LIRR will take you right there. You definitely do not need a car. I'll say that much. Then there were also some questions about areas to stay and bars to visit. I've got some info, but I'll let you go first. Where do you stay typically for Belmont?
Jennifer, you made me nervous for a second. I like to stay in the city. I've stayed in Long Island once. I like to stay in the city. I've taken the train before, the LIRR. That's how you say it, right, Pete?
Got it.
I've taken that train every time I've been to the Belmont, which is like 5 times. However, was it California Chrome or California Chrome? It was a disaster, right?
Chrome was an awful, awful year. There were all kinds of logistical problems. There were people waiting for hours. We had to wait hours for our car. It was beyond the beyonds. But to be fair, they learned from that, and it hasn't been that bad since.
The other time is like, if you have a big group, I'd book a car. That's one of the best ways to do it. One of my favorite restaurants in New York, and I always seem to get there during Belmont, is it's a restaurant, a steakhouse called Peter Luger's. I believe this could be a little bit of a misprint, but some Zagat, I think maybe like 25 of the last 30 years or 28 in the last 30 years, they've been like voted one of the top steakhouses in New York, which I think is probably a great accomplishment. But it's not really, it's nice and it's expensive, but it's not like hoity-toity. It's like got like wood floors, and the waiters are always kind of in a hurry and kind of abrasive, but the food is phenomenal. So I like to hang out in New York and just kind of do the New York thing. And there's a very touristy bar, but it's also a local bar. But if you have a little hint of patriotism in you and just a good story, it's a bar called McSorley's, where it's like an Irish pub where they only have light and dark beer. The whole staff is like Irish, and they're just really cool, like folklore stories about guys who went off to war and put wishbones up on these things, and they were going to break them when they came back, but unfortunately they didn't make it back. And it's got a firefighter presence that obviously has some influence from 9/11. It's just a really cool place. It's fun to go to. So those are some of my highlights when I go to New York.
Nice. I'm glad you mentioned McSorley's. I mean, it's not, it's East Village, so it's not. It would be like, ideally, you'd do it a different day than you were doing the track. And I will say, it gets a little nutty. But like, when you can get in there on a weekday, I just think it's amazing. I agree. It's amazing. It's just such a New York institution. Sawdust on the floor, lots of like authentic memorabilia going all the way back. One of the oldest places. Super cool. That's a hip recommendation that we've never talked about. You make me want to go there again. if you are staying nearer to the track or want to limit your orbit to around the track, I don't have Long Island places to stay. I think the ones that I've even heard of are probably all booked up. You're better off at this point just taking a shot and seeing what you can get. Or even, it wouldn't be nuts if you wanted to do things near Belmont to do an airport hotel. Honestly, it's not that far. And then just like Uber or hire a car to take you, that would not be crazy, and you would save money. If you're only doing things around Belmont, I don't know that you want to stay in the city. I think if you're staying in the city, you want to be doing at least a couple of other New York things, even if it's just like JK's awesome McSorley's idea. Luger, there are 2 locations. They're the North Brooklyn one in Williamsburg, which we have gone to typically. And, make your reservations now because it's going to be a zoo. Typically, we do the Great Neck one right near where I grew up in Port Washington, Long Island. That's our Friday night tradition, right, JK?
Yes, that is. I think I might have missed one recently, but yeah, in the past, that's the one we went to.
But listener Timothy Day, who's a loyal listener and always offering good advice, I've followed his recommendations right around Belmont, and I'm going to hit some of them to you now. These are places where we typically attempt to go during the Belmont week at some point. Trinity Restaurant on Jericho Turnpike, good food, good drinks, and best of all, there's an OTB in the bar. This one I love on Tulip Avenue. Cork and Kerry it's got an Irish bar name, but it is a speakeasy. You walk into this coffee shop and there is a phone booth, but the phone booth is really a door, and you open it up and you go into the speakeasy. Terrific cocktails in there. Also on Tulip, he's a big fan of Village Pizza, close to the Long Island Railroad, lots of bars within walking distance. He says those are the most convenient for a group to go to after the track without a reservation. For those who want to plan ahead, he recommends Crabtree's, Stella's, the famous King Umberto's. He's worth following. I would follow Timothy. If you have questions, he seems like the kind of guy who would answer them directly. He knows the area better than me at this point. At TimDay22, TimDay22. Hope you don't mind my giving your Twitter out. But hey, if you're on Twitter, apparently you want people to follow you. So follow Tim and ask your near Belmont locations. We don't know which days we're going to be out there. The festival starts Thursday. It's possible, JK, we could be out in California. Certainly want to make it to the races Friday. That's always a great industry day. And then, of course, Saturday is going to be so much fun. We've got some prices, by the way. And if we run out of things to talk about during the show, not likely. But if we run out of things to talk about during the show, maybe I'll run over to Odds Checker and we can look at some of the undercard races, but we can certainly with those odds up, that'll give us a way into talking about this unbelievable undercard that's really starting to take shape on Belmont Day. Right now, from this far out, do you have any ideas, JK, of horses you might be looking to build your picks around?
No, I haven't really. I'm excited. I'm actually hoping we have time. I'm excited to hear some of the odds and kind of get my excitement ready to rock and roll. I love those races, right? I mean, the Acorn is like one of my favorite races of all time. I love that. The cutting back to the 1-turn mile, and they just usually get such a cool field for that. Some fun winners of that. Sweet Reason, obviously one of my favorite horses of all time, Champagne Doro. And then the Just a Game is fun. That 1-turn turf mile. The Met Mile obviously is amazing. The Turf Classic is great. The Woody Stevens, I can go on for days about how much fun those races are. In fact, the Woody Stevens, the first time Robert Chow and I ever went to the Belmont, we were walking in off the platform on the train, and as they were turning for home, a horse that I was like planning on betting all my money for the day on, the Funny Bone, was coming off the turn, and he was like opening up, and like I'll never forget hearing Durkin calling the Funny Bone, and we could barely hear him as we were coming off the platform. So the undercards are always fun. I love the undercard of Belmont Day.
We're going to spend plenty of time on the next few shows delving into those odds. Probably won't have time for it today. Slightly truncated show today with me having lunch with Mickey Mouse and all that. Speaking of Tim, he had a question for us. On big days, what percentage of your plays do you put in before you go to the track that day versus playing as the day moves along? He says, by way of explanation, he's trying to come up with the right mixture. He's cost himself some money by not managing his time properly when at the track as opposed to the office. He loves going to Belmont, but wonders if playing from home would afford him some more opportunities in terms of making smart bets. Your take, JK, plays you make ahead of time versus plays on the day.
I started off as a fan of this game before I became a horse player. So I encourage people to get to the track. If you can go and you can be a part of a moment like this, I'll never forget American Pharoah winning the Triple Crown. I'll never forget California Chrome losing it. Both of those were unbelievable moments, and I really loved that I was able to be there. So I always err on the side of going. One of the things that I like to do is I ticket maker my multi-race bets before I leave. So I'll DRF ticket maker the pick 4, the pick 5, the pick 6, the pick 3 sequences that I like or whatever. And I map all of those out before I go. And that way I screenshot them. They're on my phone. They're ready to rock and roll. And then I have those. And then, I don't really bet that much anyways, like in exactas and tries, unless I'm playing a contest or unless I'm like at home in the war room. So I don't really let that get to me. I'm okay with the experience. I'll save those opportunities for Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and random Saturdays. But if you're going to do that, you can try to map all that stuff out. I wouldn't try to map it out there. I hate handicapping on top of trash cans. I hate handicapping when you can't find a pin. You're trying to figure out where to stand. I just prefer to get all that stuff out of the way before I get there. So get up early, do it on the plane the night before, do whatever you do to make sure you have all your stuff in order before you get there.
One point of emphasis. Now, the problem with doing that, of course, JK, is things like late scratches, track condition, potential biases. Now, this won't help you with biases, but as far as the late changes and how they might affect pace scenarios and whatnot, Mike Maloney in Betting with an Edge says he very closely guards the time from when those scratches are posted until the first race. And he tries to make sure for that window, at least, wherever he is, he's in a place where he can sit and think and reconsider what his opinions are, what the horses he was planning on playing in those picks, etc., key horses, however you want to describe it, based on things that might have changed. And so by preparing ahead of time and then using that final window, that has worked for him, and I think is great advice for Tim's question.
100%.
With biases, what I would say is you want to have whatever you were going to do the night before. It's pretty rare the bias is going to be so strong that you're going to want to totally rewrite that. What I would say is come back with new tickets. Tell me if you think this is a good idea. Come back with new tickets that press the horses you believe, hey, if I'm right about the speed bias, that means this, that, and the other thing are going to happen. Come back and write those tickets on the fly, maybe following the template of what you had written the night before. But basically, the more you've prepared ahead of time, the easier it's going to be to make those adjustments on the fly, kind of like studying for a test, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite move is, hey, Pete, let me see your phone. I have my phone with the screenshots. I open up DRF Ticket Maker on your phone, and I just retype out the ticket, what I already have on my phone. And if I need to make adjustments, I'll make them then. Ooh, the rail's kind of good. Let me go ahead and move this horse over here to an A horse instead of a B horse. Oh, my gosh, the outside is death. Let me go ahead and back this horse up as a B horse instead of an A horse. Save a little bit of money, but you've done all the heavy lift. You're 90% of the way there. You can just make those little last-minute adjustments.
Yeah, I think that going to the track, especially if you're a regular at a beautiful place like Belmont, you're going to want, and if you can get there easily, I mean, it's great playing from your war room at home, but you don't want to sacrifice that experience every day of the year. So even if it's harder for you to do, I think it is worth trying to make some extra efforts to be able to go out there, because there's other benefits too. We've talked about the benefit of going to the track live and the networking that happens there and the relationships that you can build and develop. And I wouldn't want to sacrifice that, nor just the experience of being out there. And it might not be a bad idea to try to find a place to go at the track where you can get work done, wherever that is. Maybe not the place where all your friends hang out. Maybe there's a stone table out by the duck pond. Maybe you go all the way out to the farthest section down in the grandstand and you find a place where you can work that's close by. I'm spoiled in Saratoga. I have the press box for that. I don't go to the press box much. I think I was there once last year. But it's nice to know that I have someplace I can go, put on headphones, and I'm going to see people and smile and say, hey, but I'll be able to put my head down and get that extra little bit of work. Paddock Bar is kind of like that too. Obviously it's super social, but if I'm there early with headphones on sitting at my table, it's not like people are going to come up to me. I'm going to be able to sit there and get done that extra little bit of work. So those are just some ideas. Hopefully hopefully Tim, you'll find those helpful, and it's something we can continue to talk about more. Let's talk tournaments for a minute, JK, and then we'll do a very quick look at some races over the weekend. To be perfectly honest, haven't had a chance to do much looking ahead. I know, though, we certainly want to talk about these graded stakes at Santa Anita and anything else you've looked at. But important tournament announcement. If you're planning on playing in Monmouth's contest, super popular Monmouth Pick Your Prize, June 2nd at the Jersey Seaside Oval, you got to let Brian Skirka know this weekend. Officially, you're only able to buy entries until the end of the day Saturday. Between us, wouldn't surprise me if that day could slip a day or two, but it ain't going to slip till the middle of next week. You've got to let him know that with how they do that prize structure at the NHC, at the Monmouth Pick Your Prize, with so many NHC seats, so many BCBC seats, and the cash slots, he finalizes it well in advance. This is a great opportunity, this contest. Monmouth, beautiful. Hey, you might be able to make a sports wager there this year if all goes according to their plan. I haven't seen the latest news out of Jersey, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's up and running by June 2nd. It's terrific to go. Players come in from all over the country. And last year, I think they paid down to 23rd. I think the 23rd finisher out of 171 entries got an NHC seat last year. JK, is this one on your dance card?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to try to make the trip. So it should be fun. It's always fun. One of my favorite things to do in that contest, if you're adventurous, is to stay in the city in New York and then take the C Streak ferry down from Manhattan down to Jersey, and then it's like a 20-minute, 15-minute Uber ride from there. It's always fun to do that.
Ferry ride's awesome. It is definitely a feature, not a bug, having to take the ferry down. I'm going to try. There's a cool brewery right in Atlantic Highlands near where the ferry is. I don't know how this is going to work if I have Perrin with me, but I want to try to check it out maybe after the races this year. We always end up zipping home, but there's some really cool restaurants and bars and things to do in and around that area. Hopefully we'll actually get to check some of them out this year. Should be a good crew. But if you want to play, book those tickets with Brian. I have an article on the site now. You can go ahead, and his phone number is there. His email is there. Let him know you're coming. It's going to be great. Now, if you don't want to buy your way into Monmouth, you do have one final opportunity, and it's happening on Memorial Day Monday. $126 buys you into the last chance, and 1 in 23 players will advance. So the ratio, it's a bigger ratio than on a lot of our events, but for $126 to win your Monmouth entry and some travel, it's still a pretty good opportunity. And if you've already, it's only 2 entries per player at Monmouth, but if you've reserved your 2 spots and you win on Monday, Brian Skirka tells me you can have one of those refunded. So it's an excellent opportunity to take a shot. Also on Monday, you'll be able to participate in the Saratoga Betting Challenge contest. And then all weekend long, feeders, credit builders, Del Mar, opportunities for that. I think there's going to be one more Belmont contest, one more opportunity on DRF tournaments to win into the Belmont. You can look for that. And, of course, World Championship of Handicapping, DRF's online championship, $1 million expected in the prize pool with no takeout. So go to DRF Tournaments, tournaments.drf.com. Check out all of your opportunities there. One player who's going to be making his way to Monmouth, it sounds like, is the champion from last weekend's WHT Santa Anita event, Philly Joe Mecca. A lot of conversation about Philly Joe and the fine job he did. I've got a piece going up shortly about second-place finisher Justin Mustari. Unbelievable story, this kid, and I write about it in the article. It'll take the rest of the show to explain on here, I think. But the way that he outfoxed tournament veterans at the end of that contest to make sure that he got the second-place money, it's all in the story about Justin on there. I got a comment, and I want to address this, JK, with you this week about the format at the WHT, somebody said they didn't like it because at the end it forced players to make these super big bets on likely winners instead of playing the horses that they would want to play or the value horses. And I used this line a minute ago about the ferry, and I'll use it here again. To me, it's a feature, not a bug. Maybe I said it backwards before. What I meant to say is it's a feature, not a bug. Not a bug, not a feature. I think it's a great thing because of the way it forces the action for television and makes players have to play horses who are likely, if not to win, at the very least to fire in that last contest, trying to create some drama here. Isn't that the idea?
Yeah, see, I just completely disagree with that. So it's a free country. It's a free run tournament. There's 12 horses in the last race, and you, the player, can bet as much money or at least 5,000 on any one of those 12 horses that your heart desires. And if you happen to pick the 5-2 shot because in your brain you feel like he's the most likely winner, then that's your problem. Why is that a problem? If someone thought Soy Fett was going to win, they would have bet their 5,000 on Soy Fett. But they didn't. So I just don't understand that.
I like I said, I think it drives the action the way that we need it to be driven. I mean, the fact is, you could run the tournament. I'll just play devil's advocate just for a laugh. You could run 1,000 simulations of players playing those races, and I'm not sure that more than one out of 1,000 would have played the winner in the last race. But that's where, to me, all the other races come into play, and the strategy of making a clever bet the way that Justin made comes into play. I don't think it's a problem at all. I think it's great.
No, I do too. And the other idea of this format is it rewards the person who has the best overall performance. So a guy that was good enough to get into the top 8 to accumulate a bankroll that would help him maximize his opportunities on Sunday. And then on Sunday, the person who was able to identify the most winners having to bet every race. Like, I just don't really get it. I don't, to me, and I love every format. I don't have a problem. Okay. But if you go to the $2 mythical format, there's a problem because you have guys picking horses that they don't like. If you go to the live money format, you have guys that are betting tons of money and cold cocking things to catch the leader, betting $3,000 tries and all that kind of stuff. In this situation, you had 9 races to pick winners, and on the last race, how can you be upset that all 4 players that were left, if their horse wins, they win? I just don't. And then the guy who was in first won because no one else hit anything. I don't see the complaint.
It was a dream scenario, and I don't see it changing. If there could be some tweaks along the way. In terms of amounts of blinds and things like that. But I think this is a format that was designed to work for TV, and in the 3 times it's been tested, it's worked every time. So it's going to be fun to see. But I don't know about you, JK, but I always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear what people say, whether you agree or disagree. And if folks out there have constructive criticism, I mean, bring it on. It's part of how we're going to make this thing fly.
Yeah, I like most of the feedback. Most of it. There's some feedback that's a little bit dim, but most of it's good.
Fair enough. But don't hesitate. There's no, don't hesitate to give feedback. There'll be no. JK might judge you, but you'll be A-okay with me, and I'm the host of this show anyway. So there you go. All right, 10 minutes left, JK. Let's talk about some racing. Did you look at anything that wasn't Santa Anita? Any thoughts to share from around the country, or should we just dive right in to the 3 stakes at Santa?
I mean, I could talk about the race at the turf sprint at Belmont for 12 seconds. The horse for Todd, I think, is going to be super tough. He's got really fast time form numbers, some 150s, 160s going a mile. Now he's cutting back. He's even money, but if you're trying to build some things, I would try to get really, really skinny there. I think the horse's name is Gidu or I don't know, Gidu.
GIDU at Belmont. I like it. Should we zip across country to Santa?
Yeah, let's go the Gold Cup, huh?
Correct. The Gold Cup is first. Some big names in here. Accelerate Back, City of Light, Dr. Door. Where'd you end up?
City of Light. I think that this is like an ultimate confidence move. The horse could hop on a plane in 2 weeks and run for 1.5 million in the Met Mile in the Grade 1 out on the East Coast. A race that a lot of people point to as a real stallion maker, but decides to stay home and run at 1.25 miles, stretching the distance even a little bit further from the 2 Grade 1s at 7 to the graded stakes win at Arkansas at 1 mile and a 16th, and now shows up here at 1.25 miles. I think he's going to be tough. He's drawn outside of Accelerate. Hopefully he can sit right off of that one. For whatever reason, if this becomes 10 furlongs, it's just a little bit much for City of Light. I think Accelerate will win the race. So for me, it's City of Light. I think this is a talented horse. 133 time for him last time, in great hands with Mike McCarthy. I think he'll be tough in here, and we'll see him hopefully at some races or some opportunities at Saratoga this summer.
Clarify your point about the Met Mile. I think somebody could say, hey, wait a second, if the horse was doing so great, blah, 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 here's this more important race in a couple of weeks, blah, blah. Why do you see that as a positive?
Well, I just think from a stallion making standpoint, right? If you look at City of Light's resume, he's got two Grade 1 wins and one turn at 7 furlongs. Now he can win at 1.25 miles in a Grade 1 and have that on his resume and run and walk over from his own stall, or they can put him on a plane halfway across the country, run him in the Met Mile, which is obviously a much more physically taxing race, in my opinion, having to it's kind of an all-out situation for a 1 mile, especially with those quality horses in there. Or you can find out right now in a race that will likely be easier for him if he can get 1.25 miles. If the answer is yes, then you can plan the rest of your campaign pointing to Churchill in the fall. If the answer is no, then you can cut him back into other situations and point for races like maybe even still point for races like the Woodward or the Whitney, and then have a vision of maybe getting him back to the Cigar Mile and accomplishing virtually the same thing you would accomplish by getting the Met Mile win.
I think you offer a lot of insight into why this is such a great spot for the horse, and you think he's talented as he is, assuming he gets the distance, which again is a great risk and reward thing based on future value. Could it be a man against boys situation here, or do you think it's tougher than that?
I don't think it's probably fair for Accelerate.
Yes,
it's probably like a big man versus a little man, and then a bunch of boys. And that's kind of how I would look at it. I just think City of Light is more talented and is a better horse than Accelerate. Like but I also have a thing with him. Like I try to beat him all the time, and I just learned to stop. I think Dr. Door is going to win some nice races, and I think he's a nice horse, but a little bit too much blue in those forward races for me on the time form U.S. pace figures. And so, I think City of Light got this right where he wants it. I think he'll relax. He's shown the ability to set off horses and finish. I think he'll be tough in here.
Let's move on to the Whittingham 1.25 miles on the turf Grade 2 spot. It's in the post, 6-5 favorite on the morning line. Who do you like?
So I like 3 horses here, and I played a late pick 5 on out of the gate. So, obviously the listeners of our podcast, they kind of get to hear a little bit about that, and I'm okay with giving that away if you want to hop over and hear it in detail. Obviously, I'm going to start with It's in the Post. If a closer wins this race or a horse that's going to come from off of it, I think it's going to be It's in the Post. That horse had an excuse last time at Keeneland. He was outside of a turf course we've talked about many a times, was very inside favoring against a horse One Go All Go, who's shown how good he is in the races that he's run, and was closing into that pace and just didn't quite get there. He's back home. I think he'll do just fine in this spot. But I'm gonna play with What a View and Kinji Storm a little bit. What a View, I believe, has run at 1.125 miles 3 times and has been in the money all 3 times. Has won at 1.125 miles a couple times. He's going to be a forwardly placed horse. He ran well in his last race. I think he'll be tough from a forward position, and he might even get loose here, depending on what they decide to do with Kinji Storm. And then Kinji Storm, on the other hand, is another horse that I think is very interesting from a standpoint of he's had a couple of out of the money performances at 1.125 miles. However, somewhere along the line, Phil D'Amato, or maybe even it was a trainer further back, ran the horse at 1.25 miles, and then also ran the horse at 1 mile and 7/8. So somewhere, someone said this horse can relax and go long, and I believe that Phil D'Amato will find that out. We'll find that out on Saturday, and I think Kinji Storm could be tough too. Those are the three that I want. 2 of the forwardly placed horses, and then the best closer.
How are you going to weight that opinion? Will you do more on It's in the Post with the shorter expected price?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's what you want to do if you have the opportunity. In a contest setting, I would probably let It's in the Post protect me or beat me in that situation, and I would probably try to use one of the other two who are going to present a little bit more value. Although I do believe It's in the Post is the most likely winner, and I've got no problem taking a 6-5 in a contest. I just feel like there's some real value opportunities for 2 horses that have a lot of reasons why they could run well and are going to be in the forward half of the field and probably have a lot more potential for trouble.
Yeah, you don't want to take the even money shot when there's 2 other logical alternatives who you also like. You want to take that even money shot when you keep running the race in your head over and over again, and the even money shot wins more than 50% of the time. When you were mentioning about what of you in the form at 1 mile and 1/8, this is obviously 1 mile and 1/4. You were just looking at those 1 mile and 1/8 races and giving you a line on the fact that you think what of you could get this distance?
Yeah, I just think that people think, and when I pops in my head that what of you is a miler? What of you is a miler? What of you is a miler? The same way that I think a lot of people thought about Heart to Heart. Heart to Heart is a mile. Heart to Heart is a miler. He's a damn good miler, but both of those horses have shown the ability to run well at 1 mile and 1/8, which is like a clue, could be a wrong clue, but it's a clue that they could potentially run at 1 mile and 1/4 as well. I think in these turf races, especially turf races, and a lot more than dirt, I think the distance limitations are more important in dirt races because it's more of an all-out run. But in turf races, it's kind of like it's a sit and make one run thing. And if you happen to be a horse that's tactical, you're on the front end and you're sitting and then you're making that run, I think that that's something that these horses they can excel at when they get that added distance.
That's worth a whole discussion that we don't have time for. But for now, I'll just point out how great a point I think it is. I never thought about it in quite those terms. And it's part of the reason why we complain about the slowly run turf races, especially when horses who can be forward have the ability to get the distance. On turf, if they don't go fast early, stamina doesn't come into play. You make the race de facto much shorter than it is, because all the real running then only happens at the end, as it so often does. If you've got a horse who's good enough to get that position going forward, make everybody else go faster than they want to go too early, and then has the stamina to still have that closing kick, that's how you get something really special. Some news out of the Gamely, which goes as race 8. Uni, one of my favorite horses in training for making JK have to shave his facial hair like a 70s relief pitcher at some point last year. Uni will not be competing in this race. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I was going to single her. I mean, I want to use 3 horses. 2 of them I'm a little bit higher on. 1 of them I'm scared of. I want to use Madame Dance-A-Lot and Madame Stripes, both of those horses coming out of the soft turf tries at Churchill on Derby Day. Expect those horses to improve, getting back to a faster, firmer surface. The one horse that I'm also going to use, but I'm a little bit defensively, is Hawksmoor. Hawksmoor to me is dangerous on the East Coast. She's dangerous on the East Coast where she's forward and all those other guys are jacking around in the back, right? I think she's dangerous in those settings more than she is here. But if she gets loose here, I think she's probably more quality than the rest of these. So I'm a little bit torn because I don't know what trip she's going to get. She should be loose, right? She should be loose. But 2 races back, I didn't think Madame Stripes was going to be on the lead, or pressing the lead in the Royal Heroine. So you just don't ever know what's going to happen. If you think she's going to be loose, she's going to be very tough. If you are a person that thinks that Julian might take back and let something da-da-da and keep the field compact, then I think she could be in trouble quickening on this surface with these fillies. That's all.
Interesting. Make a pick so you can claim it if it comes in. I always like to claim the pod winners.
I will take Madame Stripes.
And I'll make you pick between the two in the previous race too. You gave out you mentioned the two value horses. Pick one as your.
I'll take Kinji Storm.
Okay, excellent. And that is all the time we have on the 339th edition of the DRF Players Podcast. I want to thank Jonathan Kinchin pitching in, getting the job done from the Motel 6 parking lot. I want to thank producer AJ. I didn't hear from producer Craig today, so I'm not thanking him. We'll thank Travis Stone, the voice of the Kentucky Derby, and Willie Nile for providing our theme music. For more of his music, check out willienile.com. We will be back on Tuesday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal, and we'll leave the light on for you. Wait, no, that's not it. May you win all your photos.